Welcome to the Reach the Stars podcast, a collection of conversations with cool people who do cool things. Brought to you by Papercraft Miracles. Each week, we'll bring you inspiring stories of persistence, passion, and purpose. With your host, Jonna Willoughby Lohr.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Reach the Stars podcast. I am your host, Jonna Willoughby Lohr, and today my guest is Kenyana David. She is an entrepreneur, owner of a company called 8118. She's an educator and an author and a mama and a general all-around ass kicker. So I'm really excited to have her here with us today for our very, very special episode number 50. We did it. We did 50 episodes in 1 year so far, and that's super exciting. So thank you so much for being here with us today. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me.
This is awesome. So will you tell everyone a little bit more about you and where you come from and how you got there?
Oh, sure. So have a seat. So I live in Buffalo and I've been here since my preteens, but I'm originally from Small River, South Carolina. So when I came here, it was no extraordinary event. I went to high school. I went to grade school. I went to high school, went off to college. And then I went back home and realized the South is not my jam. And then came back here. And then kind of scooted around for a while with different things. And then realized that entrepreneurship was kind of a thing I was interested in. Had kind of done some things in the past. In college, I had done some things that were not considered entrepreneurial, maybe creative, but not entrepreneurial. That was not the energy that they were trying to give at the time. It was, you're here to get a real job. So focus. So circled back, it was about 2008, 2009. And moving forward to now, 8118 is my full-time job, and that's a boutique marketing firm specializing in email marketing. So I serve as an instructional coach to female entrepreneurs, and then also as an instructional trainer for organizations, colleges, universities that support female entrepreneurship in their marketing efforts. So that's my primary jam. I'm also a adjunct professor at Madai, which I am enjoying. I've been there for a few years and I didn't realize how much I love on teaching. Like that being, like I do it for work, but to do it in a collegiate atmosphere, in a learning space, is so cool for me. So I'm there in the business department, where I teach marketing. And I'm also in the interdisciplinary studies department, where I'm having a good time with critical thinking and global leadership, intercultural communication, all the stuff that I don't get to talk about in real life with real people. So that's a good time. So those are my primary focuses, involved with organizations like NAVO, with you. That pretty much covers my day-to-day. I'm all about women and entrepreneurship and opportunity. So in my doctoral program, I'm studying that. So my goal is to move spaces at the table. So I finally feel like I'm at the table and having conversations, but the goal with the doctoral program and the research, particularly in women in entrepreneurship, is to move spaces at the table where my voices can be heard a little bit more. And we can talk about all the things that women entrepreneurs like, me and you need, the things that we need to sustain, the things that we need to just, make sure that the future is female. So those are my main jams. And then I have fun with little projects like, books and things like that. But my big deal stuff, those are my big deal stuff.
Awesome. So I since this show is all about kind of inspiring stories of people pursuing what they love and overcoming obstacles and hardship to get there, I was wondering if you'll tell a little bit about you starting 8118 and why you ended up starting this business instead of the first business that you had, and like what that story is about.
Oh, okay. So let me tell you all the things. So this is my third business, my third on paper, the government knows about it business. So the first one was publishing. I wanted to publish books, and I was reading something and got like really pissed off because these big publishing houses were, kind of cherry picking who they wanted and saying everybody else is a loser. So I was like, I'll just be one of those publishing houses. So I did all the big things before I did little things. Like I got the block of barcodes and the ISBN numbers. And, I did all those things and went to some of the programs here for it. The Center of Entrepreneurial Leadership, they had the MWE program. I was in it. And then I realized I need to publish somebody. Like I need to do it. So I was working on one thing and I was networking. Like that's what they told me to get out, talk to some folks, get excited, get them excited, do some work, make some money. So I got an opportunity to go on to AM Buffalo, right? So they told me within like a few days. So I curled my hair, I had like the cough going, like I was super excited. And when I got there was nobody there. There was a chef and there was a football player. So I did not at the time watch AM Buffalo. And that's a note to anyone. If you're going to go on anything, watch it first. Do some Googling or something, figure out what's going on, because I'm thinking, this is something local, not a big deal. So I get on there, I'm chatting, I'm talking, I'm excited. I got my parents watching, all the things, right? And the next day, folks started to send message, like email and call, and it freaked me out. I mean, when I say it freaked me out, I shut down the whole operation. Okay. Like I was like, oh no, we didn't talk about this. So I was done. That was the close of that. And then later I started an editing firm. And it was relatively, no, I wouldn't say relatively, it was successful in that, I was able to stay in it for about 4.5 years. All my work was through referrals though. So at the time I was editing and proofreading business documents for organizations, not so much colleges and universities, although there were small projects, but it was all business documents like marketing collateral, business plans, marketing plans, things like that. And it afforded me the opportunity to leave my job. At the time I was working at Geico, and I was like, I made it, I can leave. So that's exactly what I did. I left. And then Grammarly said, but not yet. I'm here. You weren't paying attention. And Grammarly came in and wiped me out. Like it was so quick how fast. This was like 16, it started to happen, 17, I was out. Like that's when, organizations, colleges were licensing Grammarly for their folks. So they didn't need somebody to check over things. They can just copy and paste it. And within, a couple of seconds, they knew all their errors. I was not ready for that either. So I ended up closing in 2017 and I wallowed for a year. I mean, like it was something terrible. Like I just didn't want to get out of bed. I was like, oh, life is over. And then I started 8118 in 2018. So 8118 is essentially the year I was born and the year I stopped wallowing and figured out that coaching, teaching was more my jam. And then it was high level at first. It was digital marketing. And then I realized digital marketing is like foreign language to most people because they don't know what it means. And they think it's automatically social media. And I was not doing social media. I was kind of like very high level. So about a year ago, I really just homed in that the focus was female entrepreneurs and email. Email was kind of the niche, the tight niche. So that's how I came to here, but it's not my first business. I would say that because I did have a couple businesses before, my growth in the 3 years that 8118 has been around has been accelerated, but it was not my first business. And the first two businesses are embarrassing stories.
I don't think they're embarrassing stories. I think that it's just such an opportunity to learn. And I think now, because you had one business where you're like super gung-ho and super excited about it, and then we're like not at all ready for it to get big real quick, and you're like, not ready, see you later. And then having your other business, like all of a sudden have some kind of, I don't know, I guess you'd call it automated competition that comes and sweeps, out of it. I think it makes you prepared in a different way to say, okay, well, I'm going to start another business, and I'm going to do it. I'm going to grow it more slowly, and I'm going to do all the little things before I do the big things. And you picked a niche where it's really difficult for something to come in automated and take your place. Like you do things that a computer can't do.
Right. And it's funny because, they're embarrassing to me because I was out in the community telling people, this is what I'm doing and call me anytime. I'm in it for life. But, I do think it was preparation for things like COVID, because I couldn't have taken COVID with the first or the second business at all. Like if I couldn't take a TV episode, COVID was not going to work. In no way, fashion, or form. So it was a learning experience. I definitely have met a lot of entrepreneurs that, this is their third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, 10th business. But when I think about the stories and I think about the time, I'm like, face palm. But they are my story. So, hey.
I think it's really good for people to hear those stories, because there's a couple of different types of people out there, right? There's the people who think, oh, you own your own business, you must be rich, which is ridiculous, first of all. But then there's other people who have tried to start their own business and have failed at multiple things, or they started an MLM thinking like, oh, they got all excited about it and they realized it's hard as fuck. And then they stopped doing it. And then they have a whole closet full of inventory and they're like, what am I supposed to do with all this stuff? And then they feel terrible because they own all these like leggings and they're like, nah, which in general, like multi-level marketing things are typically marketed towards women as like, oh, an option that you could do this from home. And I'm not saying that all MLMs are bad or that no one ever makes any money doing them or whatever, because I'm not saying that. It is, It is a valid form of making money if that's what you want to do. But I think it's really important for people who want to start a business and people who don't want to start a business but have preconceived notions about what starting and running a business is. I think it's important to hear stories of, I tried this and it didn't work, so I tried something else and maybe that didn't work. And then I kept trying something else because, I don't know, we have this culture of you have to be great at everything right away. And the world doesn't really work like that. And I think because of it, there's so many people who get either too terrified to try anything and will never, ever leave their regular day job, even though they hate it and have this other thing they really want to do, but they're too scared to fail. Or there's other people who just have these preconceived notions that, oh, you can make your own schedule. Your life must be so easy. And I think it's important for everybody to hear those stories of struggle. And that's partly why I started this show in the first place. Cause I am of the vein that, while I don't really want to be called resilient because I've dealt with a lot of crap and like overcoming that stuff is exhausting. I just think it's so important for other people to hear stories of people overcoming things that are hard and finding value in dealing with things that are difficult and growing as a person and having valuable information to share with other people. So anybody listening to this who might be thinking about starting a business, now they'll think, oh, if I'm going to start a business, I'll have to make sure I have all that little stuff in place before I really get gung-ho and like buy a whole bunch of equipment I'm not ready to use, or, you know what I mean? And do research about potential competitors and think about the things that could possibly sweep that business out from under you where you weren't paying attention. And like, those are things that if they hadn't listened to this, I think there's a lot of people who never would have thought about that. And I think people have a lot to learn from other people's mistakes and other people's advice and experiences. So I think it's good. I'm glad you could share that.
Yeah, you know what? I agree. I think for me, as a person that has done a lot of things and tried a lot of things, entrepreneurship is probably the hardest. It's the most rewarding, but it's the hardest because it's constant. You don't know what you don't know. And every, level is new. I was sharing with you earlier, hiring my first full-time employee. Like, it seems like it's a boss move. You just find somebody, you give them some money and boom. But then you're thinking about, it being the legal way to do it, it being the fair way to do it, the full understanding of tasks and responsibilities, because we've all worked those jobs where they really didn't need you full time and you probably did your work in like an hour or two and then just kind of bullshitted the rest of the time, like you were talking to your friends on yourself, doing all kinds of things. And, I think there's so much energy that you have to put into doing it the best that you can, like really putting the effort into it and doing with your head down, like that's been kind of a big focus because there are so many mistakes made. Every day I fuck up something, like every day something goes terribly wrong. And it could be something small, like a missed call or something, to, oh shoot, I forgot to add the attachment to a super important email. Like it's always something. Mm-hmm. And no one's a super at everything, like we're just not, we're not made up of all the things. So it's really hard. It's easy to get discouraged because, if numbers isn't your jam, then, you're putting more energy into that, but you're kind of pissed off. You're putting more energy into it because it's not your jam. Mm-hmm. And then, you're learning all the things and you need to know a little bit about a lot of things. But the rewarding feeling of knowing that you can do it, that you can just take the time and energy to do something. It's the coolest feeling ever.
It totally is. And I mean, when I hired my first employee, I had just won this small business grant, and the woman that I hired was a friend of mine, and she and I had very similar interests and very similar ways of working. Both of us have been diagnosed with pretty crazy ADHD in the last couple of months. And she helped me with the grant application. And I told her, if I win this, I'll hire you, because we've been trying to put together a papermaking studio and work together for like a decade. And we couldn't figure out how to make it work and where to get money. And I was like, if you help me get this money, then we can really do this. And so she was my first employee. But I learned so much from having her as my employee. Like, yes, we had a fabulous time. We got along really well because we were already friends before that. But it ended up being, we had a lot of the same strengths, but also the same weaknesses. And because I didn't know anything about how to hire employees properly and interviewing people, and I just didn't do any of that. I was like, oh, it's just you. And so in a lot of ways, she ended up kind of being another me that I paid.
Cool too.
Did a lot of the same things, and we worked side by side, and we came up with a lot of ideas because we were both crazy ADHDers, and we had tons and tons of these ideas and very little follow through because we were so excited about something for about 5 seconds. And it ended up where she left my company because she was also an artist and also wanted to be an entrepreneur. And she had her own, like, she would come up with all these ideas of things we could do in the company. And I would say, well, we could do that, but it's going to take like, A, B, C, D, and E to put that into place before we can make that happen. And these were all her ideas. And she ended up saying, I would rather leave and start my own company, and I want to work with you. I don't want to work for you. And it was super hard for me to say, I just hired my first employee. We worked together for like a year. I was relying on her a lot. And all of a sudden she's like, man, I want to go start my own company. And it ended up making me totally reevaluate how I was going to hire somebody else. And I ended up hiring another assistant who was so amazing in so many different ways from my first employee. But I also knew I need to ask someone when I interview them, are you interested in starting your own business that's kind of similar to mine? If so, maybe this isn't the right fit for you, because I need somebody who's not going to do that and who doesn't want to do that. Even if you like making your own paper art, you got to do that on your own time. And if you come up with ideas while you're working for me, those are mine. And I had, my company's going to own those if I was paying you to come up with those ideas and things like that. And I had to have paperwork drawn up by my lawyer to make sure that the people who worked for me knew that. And, if there was things that they wanted to do that was their idea that they didn't want me to own, don't bring it up at work, and things like that. And kind of helped me to figure out how to be more of the boss and not just hiring my friend. And how to kind of delegate certain tasks. And because of my personality, I needed people who were really good at being self-starters, who could take a look at the situation we're in and say, here's some things that I could get done by myself. I could make a list of things that I see that need doing around here. And when she left my company right at the beginning of COVID, she got another job that was very well paying and very deserved for her with her master's degree. And I was like, you do you, because you're amazing. And after that, I had this totally different opportunity to hire new people. And I had all this new perspective on, what type of employee am I looking for? And I ended up having two employees. My first two employees were pretty similar to me in the way that we worked. I hired two people in a row who had pretty crazy ADHD and loved coming up with lots of ideas. And so when I hired my newer employees, I had been working with a business coach, Nicole Overcamp, who has been a guest on this show. And was kind of the impetus for this show wanting to start in the first place. She's the first person I ever interviewed with the 5 questions that we ask at the end of all the shows. But one of the things she helped me with while we were coaching together was figuring out what you should hire someone for first. And she had me draw out this grid where you draw a little plus sign in the middle of a piece of paper. And on one square, you write all the things that you are really good at doing. And then the next square, you've put in a list of all the things you really enjoy doing. And then you make a list of all the things you don't enjoy doing, but you are capable of doing. And then you make a list of all the things that you suck at doing. Those are the things you hire people for first. And so when I hired my next 2 employees, when I made that list, I was figuring process mapping, organization, big picture organizational skills and planning. Those are not good for me. I'm really good at coming up with all these ideas and then not knowing what to do with them. And I need some people who are going to help to herd the cats in my brain. So I ended up hiring 2 employees who had completely and totally different skills. I hired one person who had helped manage an office and had done a lot of retail management and that type of thing, but also was artsy. So I was like, well, that's perfect. This is the kind of person who's going to be able to take all these papers I've been writing all these notes on and make sense of them so we can find them later. And my other employee that I hired she has done teaching and in colleges, but she also is her own artist in her own right and is working on gallery work and has done a lot of grant writing and things like that. But she also ran paint nights for 3 years in a row. So she knows how to organize events and how to promote them and how to get people to come to them. And I was like, that's the 2 people I need. I need one person to do all this kind of paperworky stuff and organize my craziness. And then I need somebody else who's really good at helping with the follow through of all these fun ideas I want to do. And having both of them was so crucial in the middle of COVID, where I had 2 10-hour-a-week employees who did totally different things, but I was still training them both to do making paper and making books and that kind of thing, but that they brought things to the table that I didn't have. And it was a game changer for my business. So for anyone out there who's trying to figure out how to hire your first employee, make that grid, and hire out for the things that you are not good at doing first. Even if there's things like you could do the bookkeeping, you don't really enjoy it, but you can do it, hire somebody to do the other stuff first. Because it will actually take those things off of your plate to give them to someone who's better at them than you. And it makes your team stronger. So
right. And I agree. I too, so Nicole is my jam. Nicole, I did the grid. I totally did the grid. I love on Nicole. She has been my business coach for the entire time of my business, the whole 3 years. So she definitely made me do the grid. I'm excited about it. I do. I think just as a person that overthinks everything, I do know that there's going to be, some aspects that are spaghetti on the wall, and I'm looking forward to them. But in my head, when I'm being very transparent, I've learned to be kind of a Jackie of all trades in my business. Like I've created this efficiency of, there shouldn't be this amount of time between a reply, or this should be done this way. And I'm worried about that, but I know it's a control thing. But I do think with all, professional development, you have to get personal development, kind of make room for the professional development, because I am a very meticulous person, very detail oriented, very, very, very specific. And that could be considered micromanaging, So I'm aware of it, but we're going to see how it goes. We'll see how it goes. If you see a comment under one of your, under this podcast, it went terribly wrong, terribly fast, don't ask any questions. That's what. But I'm excited. I'm excited about the growth of my business. I've been really head down doing the work for 3 years now, and just really trying to get it to this point. So it's a win. It's a win for me that I'm at a point where I can hire. I'm at a point where like in your business, at every given moment, there's either you have more time or you have more money, and for a long time, it was more time, so I had to do all the things. So it's a win. It's a win. It's a nervous win, but it's a win. So I'm excited.
Yeah, it's weird going from being this solopreneur who has to do everything. And so you figure out a way to get all that stuff done. And it's funny because this is another thing I learned from Nicole that I pretty much think about every single day. And I've talked about on this podcast a lot of times, is that done is better than perfect. And especially hiring someone to kind of reorganize my work life. In some ways, it makes me totally insane. Because not only is she reorganizing all the papers and she's making sense of them and has a system and things are actually filed, but because it's not the way I was doing it before, I have to relearn the way that she's doing it better. So I have to also admit that the way I was doing it is probably not the best way, most efficient way of doing it. But I also have to relearn where all the shit went. Like, where are those papers? Where is that material? Like, where did you put it? So it's hard for me as a total control freak type person.
Yeah.
Also has mild OCD about my things, and that they need to be in a certain place and look a certain way and be organized like this. And if they're not somewhere where I can see them all the time, I tend to forget that they exist. And things like that. So I had to be okay with letting her do it and trust that I had hired someone who could do those things better than me. And it is almost every single day it tests me. She's trying to explain something to me, and because she has a different kind of brain than I do, she's explaining it to me, and my brain is going like 100 miles a minute, and I'm like, but what about this and this and this? And she's like, roll it back. We're not even talking about that. We're just talking about, where are these photos? Where are these stored? And I'm like, oh, okay. Let me slow my brain down back to the essentials of what you actually were trying to do. So that kind of thing, getting to the point where you trust your employee that you've brought on is a difficult thing. And it's one of those things that when you are interviewing somebody for the job, those are the kind of things that you want to kind of ask questions to sort of suss out about their personality. And do they have the kind of personality that when they're trying to make changes to the way you do things, are you going to get triggered and get pissed because they're changing the way you do things? Or are you going to be like, okay, it's all for the better. They're helping me. They are helping me. And so that for sure has been one of the toughest things about becoming a boss as opposed to someone that just works for themselves. It's tricky.
So I found a way to kind of mitigate my frustration and kind of get away from the clenching my butt cheeks every time she said something. So I did decide, so I have an internship program, and my first intern was in 2018. So she actually asked me to intern. It was super duper random. She found me on Facebook and she's like, can I interview you for a class project? And I'm like, sure. You know, we decided to meet at Starbucks. So I was like, double win. And then I looked on her profile and we have the same birthday. So I was like, oh yeah, I got to totally do it. I have to do it. So we met, and she asked me about an internship program. And at the time I didn't have one, but I was like, I'll create one for her. Like, if she's that interested, I'll figure it out. That's another story for another episode. However, you know, I've thought of her over the years. I stay in contact with her, and I was like, if I ever get to a point where I can pay her, I will totally pay her and give her the best experience. And I reached out to her recently, and I was like, I don't know where you are in life, what's going on, if you got a job, you don't got a job, but I have this opportunity. This is my budget. This is what it looks like. And she accepted. And I was like, you know, that is how I'm going to mitigate my frustration, my anxiety about all of or not so much frustration, but more anxiety, just going with someone that has already kind of worked with me in a space. And one that'll kind of push me to be that CEO role, because now I'm very much the founder role. You know, like, I am creating and founding all the things, but it makes me less anxious, still nervous, but we'll see how it goes. I'm looking forward. I'm excited, looking forward. I am sending Nicole messages all day, voice messages, not text. I'm like, listen, you need to hear this because right now I need to just get it out. So they're like 4 minutes, 5 minutes, 7 minutes messages, but you know, it's part of growing. You know, that's the exciting thing. You know, that's the goal. You know, that's the ultimate goal, is to grow and sustain. And I imagine the next level is going to be just as nerving for me and for you, for all of us. So every level has a new level of what the hell, you know, what's happening and why.
Yes, I keep trying to remind myself something that my mom told me the first time I ever got up on a microphone and read my poems in public. And I was super, super nervous and really afraid. And she said, the only difference between nervousness and excitement is fear.
That's a good one.
So I have really tried to focus on that and think about that when I feel that anxiety build up from making a change or taking a big leap or a big uncertain step, as a person who really likes certainty and having a plan. When I'm going to take one of those steps where I'm not quite sure how it's going to work or how it's going to go and things are going to change and it's going to be different, I try to remind myself that I am not afraid of this. I'm excited for something new to happen. It's hard. I like that. It's hard, but it is helpful to remind myself that I asked for this. You know, right. This is life that I chose for myself, and I chose to not work for somebody else because I wanted to be the one who's making those decisions. And a lot of times I do get paralyzed from making decisions. And, you know, even just the simplest thing, if one of my assistants is like, should I put this thing over here or over there? And I'm like, I don't know where that should go. I can't make that decision. And I just was like, you decide. You do that. That's now your job to decide where that should go. Or something like that. And kind of either giving the responsibility of that to somebody else or saying, this is something that I can make the decision of. Slow it down, take one step at a time, and make that happen. It's tricky, but it's worth doing because
right.
We chose this, y'all. We chose this.
Right. And that's the thing, you know, I have to remind myself, you're getting all the things that you asked for. You know, you were ready. Yesterday, you were ready. So today, you know, bring back in that energy. But, you know, they are things that, you know, I asked for and things that I was, you know, actively working towards. So they're not really a surprise, but it feels different when you actually get it. So, but it's cool. It's all cool.
Yes, it is. I have this tattoo on my arm, which if you're watching the video, you can't see it because I have a cute sweater on. But I got it when I was 19 years old. And I don't know if you ever read that book, Matilda, when you were a kid. But that was one of my favorite books when I was little. And I love the idea that she could do anything she set her mind to, including moving things with her eyes, which, you know, it's a little bit magical and not realistic, but that's kind of my mindset that like, you could just go for it. But it's Matilda riding on a shooting star. And I got it when I was 19 because I wanted to be reminded to always reach for the stars, but I wanted to be careful because if you miss, it's a really long way to fall. But if you catch it, the whole ride is going to be a whole lot hotter and a whole lot faster than you ever thought it was going to be. And that there are good things and bad things when things go according to plan. You know what I mean? Like, yes, it's great that my company is growing and I have new employees, but with that success brings lots of other challenges and new things that I need to deal with and I need to learn about and more stress, you know, like there are always going to be more stressful things that happen when you have more people involved. Right. And, you know, it's like, yes, I do want to run a company that not only supports me, but gives meaningful employment to other people and gives other artists a way to make money doing what they love and makes them excited and happy to go to work when they get up every day and they say, I get to go to this job today where I have a boss who I feel like cares about me as a person and, you know, knows what I like to do in my personal life and cares about those things and asks me how my dog is doing and stuff like that. And, you know, I want to be that employer, but it is stressful as hell, you know, like going into our typical slow season and thinking, okay, well, when it was just me and I wasn't paying myself a paycheck and I was a solopreneur and if the company made money, cool. If not, I got to make art and that's cool too. Like that's what I love. But now that I have other people's livelihoods.
Right.
On my back, like we need to succeed so that I can keep paying y'all, not just keep paying myself, but keep people employed. It adds that extra layer of stress to it. And I'm not going to lie, it's stressful. It's hard. And it does, I wouldn't say it changes how I feel about owning my business because I definitely still know that I'm doing what I want to be doing with my days. But it does add another layer of difficulty to it that like, okay, I just added more weights to my barbell, you know, like I'm going to have to figure out how to pick this one up now because it's heavier. And I've been thinking about that a lot and, you know, figuring out, okay, it is heavier, but how can I take some of these weights and give it to these people I have around me and have them help me lift this thing up? And I'm not doing this all by myself now because I do have a team and I do have people and, you know, they're not just here to do all the crap I don't want to do. They're here for a reason and we're working together to grow this company together. And I couldn't do it without them. So it's really, really special to have a team, but it is hard to be the leader of the team.
That part.
Yep. And just learning how each of my employees has a totally different style for the way that they work and the way that they learn and the way that they take criticism and things like that. And I'm constantly learning how to deal with different people. And when I made up my major in college, most people who listen to this show pretty regularly know that I made up my own major to do exactly what I'm doing right now. And I think one of the most valuable classes that I took in all 4 years was a social work class that was the art and science of managing people.
Mm.
And I think a lot of entrepreneurs would never think that a social work class had such a valuable place in entrepreneurship. But so much of running your own business is relationships. It's dealing with your clients and dealing with potential clients and other entrepreneurs and figuring out how to collaborate. And then once you have a team, like learning to work with those people and finding their strengths and working with their weaknesses and things like that. So I'm constantly thinking back to things I learned in that class all the time.
I'm sure they're helpful. I think the lessons that we learn along the way, just, relationships that we have, especially relationships that were very, very short or very, very long, and in what capacity they were in, whether they were in organizations, if they were in school, if they were in like a job, thinking back on, what worked and what didn't work. I'm pulling a lot of things from my different roles, whether it's teaching or, in organizations, like, what are, people gravitating toward? What are the things that they are giving me good feedback? What are the challenges I'm running into with people? And it goes back to, it's what you ask for. For me, I spent a lot of time head down preparing for essentially everything that's happening in my business, even teaching was part of that. Like I need some credibility. I need some validity. I need someone, testimonials were great. But I need to know what it really looks like, and I have to do the work, so teaching was one of those things. If I'm, being an instructional coach, there's so many teaching aspects to that, like, yes, it helped get opportunities, but then it was also, what lessons are, especially teaching 17, 18, 19-year-olds. Mm-hmm. That's an experience. That's a mood, there's so many transferable skills with that. And I think that, all entrepreneurs, whatever you're doing is kind of preparation. Even the two businesses that didn't work out that great, there was some parts that were really, really cool. There was some things that I definitely do now. And then there were some things like, I don't know why you did that. You shouldn't have done that. Don't ever do that again. I remember when I was in editing, I'll never forget it because I bought some suits, like 3-piece suits, like, the skirt, pants, or whatever. And I got this office, this duty droit office. And I was like, I'm in business. Like, I'm in business. Everyone's going to take me seriously. No one came to that office I had for 2 years. And I didn't look the part. Like, to me, that was what I was being told. You have to look serious about your business. You have to look like you're ready to do business. And I misinterpreted the messaging. And it could have changed over the years too, because entrepreneurship now is so much more supported than back then. Back then it was, oh, you're a creative, there's no money really in that. You need to really get a job. Mm-hmm. But, now, I wear my jeans and my Chucks and, I still am doing the same things, but all those lessons then, like, do what you want to do it how you want to do it. Obviously, learn the things that you need to learn to be great, but, kind of all just folds in together, all the lessons that you learned, all the things that you heard, and they are constantly changing. They're constantly changing what an entrepreneur looks like, what a business owner looks like, what a female business owner looks like, mm-hmm. where their priorities should lie. There's so much that you're taking in and you're kind of processing, and you have to go backwards. You have to think about, well, what was I doing in high school, and what's, something that a random teacher told you that you now remember, 30 years later. Mm-hmm. So it's all full circle. And I think being open to that, every day's a new day, but you're not a new person, and just kind of moving forward and remembering those things because they come at the most appropriate time. Mm-hmm. It seems super random, but it's all at appropriate time. So I agree with you. You have to kind of go backwards sometime to go forward. And a lot of those things that you're like, I'm never going to need this again. You need it now. Mm-hmm. Even the math, like you need it now.
Yeah. Yeah.
I agree with you.
It's so interesting that so many times in my life, the next piece of my puzzle will show up right in front of me. And there's a lot of times where I'm like, I can see that it's a puzzle piece, but I can't quite see how it's going to fit.
Yeah.
But I'm like, I think I should hold on to this one, maybe turn around a couple times, see if it fits in that one spot over there that's empty, see if it fits over here. But even if you don't quite see right away where that piece is going to fit, there are ways, I think as I get older, I learn to recognize more quickly.
Yeah. When
that piece is right in front of me, like, oh, you better get that one. Even if you don't know where it goes right now, like put that in your back pocket because the piece that might need to go in before that is coming, but hold on to that one. Because you never know when the puzzle might just, kind of show its picture to you. And you're like, oh, it just clicks into place. That's where that thing needs to go. That's the step I need to get to the next level or whatever. And you never know when you might learn that kind of stuff. I mean, I graduated from college thinking like, yeah, I'm going to run my full-time art business, like right off the bat. And I got back here to Buffalo and there was like, I had no social network. There was no Facebook. There was nothing. Yeah. I didn't know anybody. I was like this punk ass kid that had no credibility and was a woman trying to start a business with no credibility and no money and no nothing. And people thought I was crazy and all this stuff. But I ended up getting a job working at a gas station as an assistant manager. And at the time I was like thinking to myself and feeling like this is a failure. I went to school for this one thing and I'm not doing that at all. But the 5 years that I worked running somebody else's business like that taught me so much about running a business. I learned how to do inventory. I learned how to manage people. I learned how to do payroll. I learned how to deal with all sorts of different kinds of customers. And if you've ever been in a gas station waiting in the line, they're not always real happy customers and stuff like that. And being able to navigate that and like to be assertive as a woman and to, necessarily, they say the customer's always right, but like in the real world, the customer is not always right. And sometimes the customer is a total asshole. And like, you need to, as a woman, if you're going to learn how to be the boss, I think for me, it was invaluable to be the person with the name tag behind the counter who was telling somebody, no, you can't do that in this business. You need to leave or whatever. And like learning how to be assertive as a young woman was something that if I had not had that job, I probably never would have learned how to do that in that way. And it made it so that when I actually was out on my own as this business, and when somebody tried to give me shit, I don't take any of it.
Yeah. That's a good point.
I don't feel people's insults or people's doubts. Like it doesn't hit me the same way because I know that what I'm doing is right for me and that I have overcome all of that. I can't say that I never have imposter syndrome or anything like that, but like, I feel like I have earned the right to be the boss. And it took working for somebody else to learn how to do that. And it was all valuable. It was.
You make me think about a conversation I recently had. So I definitely agree. The job that puts you in your feelings is the job that's going to shift you, especially when it comes to your entrepreneurial efforts and energies. And I worked at Geico. And this is not, I should talk about Geico, but Geico was the most important but most disliked job. So I worked in the claims department, and pretty much all day you're getting calls of an accident. Somebody, it could be, like a little fender bender, or it could be like, oh my gosh, I think my husband's dead. You don't know what you're going to get, and you get them all day. And it was an energy gouger for me. Like, it's just, I had so much anxiety going in. However, there was some amazing things about that job that prepared me for 8118. First, they hire 4 out of every 100 people that they interview. At least that was a statistic then, about 2015. So the interesting thing about it was my confidence level shot through the roof. Like, I can get any opportunity I go for. Like, if you're only picking 4 out of 100 people, I'm fearless when I go for different opportunities now with the business. You know, like, you hear so many no's, and you put out these RFPs or response to RFPs, you're doing all the things, but Geico gave me this wild confidence and ambition to just go for it. What do you have to lose? They can say no. And their interview process is so long. So for me, it was kind of like, all those no's that I get, it's fine. The yes is the big deal. You know, you just keep moving till you get to the yes. So that was that. The structure of Geico is amazing. You get, generally speaking, you get 1 weekend off, 1 weekend day, and 1 weekday. So the weekday is pretty much for you to handle your business that you couldn't do on the weekend. And the weekend is to enjoy your family. So that's my work schedule now. Like, I have one day that I take care of, you know, the kids' doctor's appointments, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And then, you know, one weekend where I can try to be fun. Now, that doesn't work out every weekend, but, you know, that's that structure. They are so time oriented. You know, you have your 2 minutes, you have your 45-minute lunch. Like, my efficiency in my business really came from Geico. You know, like, this was the schedule. This is what kept you employed. And, you know, I did it for a little over a year. So when I shifted to 8118, all the things I didn't like, you can see them: customer service skills, all the things I was like, I can't wait to get out of this job. Like, I can't wait. When I got out, though, that's when I was like, oh, well, that wasn't so bad. And I remember this. And but the job that gets you in your feelings is really, for entrepreneurs, that shift. That's the thing that you probably or may not have the same skills before you started there. And now you have them and you can compete. You know, like, that was and to some extent still is my competitive advantage. Like, my efficiency is on one. Like, they did not play games with you. You know, if you couldn't keep up, you were out. And, you know, they were fearless too, in a sense of, we'll get rid of you. Even though we're only going to hire 4 out of the next 100 people, we're not afraid to get rid of you. You know, like, you can go. If you're not doing the things, you can go. And I love that. It was uncomfortable when I was there, because it's like, all these numbers, you got to meet these numbers. But in my own business, it's how I operate. It works. It's efficient. You're not afraid. If this doesn't work out, I'm doomed. You know, now it's like, okay, there's going to be another opportunity. Just keep coming. So I agree with you that your past experiences kind of set the tone for your current and future experiences.
Yeah, that reminds me. I had this writer on the episode. I think it was like the 5th episode, one of the first ones. And I was constantly seeing on his social media and on his email blasts that he would send out, like, oh, I got this book award, or I've got this opportunity, got featured on this press thing, and all of these wins, like, repeatedly. And I was like, how do you do it? We're the same age. Like, you're winning all the time. What's up? And he was like, you know what the secret is? He's like, do you know how many rejection notices I got in the last year? And he's like, you have to put yourself out there so often that you only have time to track the yeses. And he actually had a goal of getting rejected 100 times in 1 year. Because he was like, if I put it out there, whatever I'm doing, and put my book out there, put my poems out there, whatever, submit to this thing, try out for this opportunity or whatever. And he's like, if I get 100 no's, how many yeses am I going to get?
Yeah.
I don't have enough of those to fill up my days. And it's, you know, as creatives in general, you know, the amount of people who are going to be naysayers, who are going to try to knock you down or think of, you know, why you can't succeed, or why whatever idea you have is crazy, or it's not going to work, or they don't like it, or they think you're not good enough, or whatever, you know, all of those things. The more often that you try, you just you don't have time to keep track of all this times it didn't work.
Right. Right.
And I just think that's such a valuable thing to put out there, because there are a lot of creatives and business owners who can't take criticism and can't take rejection. And it does make them stop when people don't like what they're doing or don't want to buy their product or their service or whatever. And, it's a really valuable lesson to learn that if somebody doesn't want to buy what you're selling, then they're not your customer. So it doesn't matter.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't matter if they don't want it, because you don't even need to sell it to them, because there's so many other people who do want to buy it. You just got to find them,
Right.
So before we end up talking all day long, at the end of all of my shows, I ask all the guests the same 5 questions. So it's 5 question time. So the first question is, tell me about an experience that shaped who you are today.
Oh, there's so many. I will say when I was hired with Geico, I think at that time in life, I was very unsure. I was I felt like personally, I was just dealing with so many things that just didn't say you can do it, that you got this. And then with Geico, it was definitely like this moment. It was an energy that essentially helps me make decisions today. Like, you can totally do this. You just have to show up. Mm-hmm. So I would say that is one of my top shifts, like one of the top things that happened, experiences that I've had that shaped who I was. Because I don't think if I would have, if I didn't get hired, I don't think I would have started 8118. I just didn't have confidence. I didn't have those things yet. I wasn't there yet to try something so niche as email marketing, for one. Like, this is such a tight niche. I couldn't have done it. I needed that particular experience.
I love that. Okay, number 2, when you feel defeated or overcome, what do you tell yourself to keep going?
A nap is okay. I do. Like, it's okay if you take a nap and just reset. We'll talk about it later. That's the meeting that I have with myself. But that's it.
I love that. So for those of you who don't know, Kenyana gets up real early in the morning, and it's like earlier than I could ever even dream of getting up. And we've talked about this a lot, that's like one of her things that helps her a lot with her getting her shit done and being really efficient as a mompreneur, and like having that couple of hours before anybody else gets up to get a lot of stuff done. And I'm like, I'm not worthy of your ability to be efficient like that early in the morning. So when you're like, it's okay to take a nap, I'm like, good for you, girl, because you get up early.
You know what, though? For all those entrepreneurs, or soon to be not yet entrepreneurs, the morning, if you're a morning person, stretch yourself. I get up at 3:45. And to be honest with you, by the time everyone wakes up, I'm done with my day. Like, everything that had to get done gets done. So you'll get an email at 8:00 because it was scheduled. I have been up for hours, but if the morning is your jam, just stretch yourself with the morning, because magic happens around 4:30. You just got to be ready for it.
I don't know if I'm ever going to be that person, but because there's a lot of nights where, it's 1:30, 2:00 in the morning, and I'm still up, and I'm not even going to bed yet. So the idea of getting up at 3:45 is like not happening, because I will have been asleep for like an hour. But I know that I'm a nighttime person. And when I worked at the gas station, every holiday and every weekend, I had to open the store, and I had to be there at 5:30 to open the store. And even when it was my job to have to be up and be awake that early, it was still really hard every single day to go to sleep early enough and get up and be like a functional human being who could get anything done. but it was pretty nice, like getting out of work at like 3 and being done for the day.
You know what? I was reading this story a while ago. It's a grandmother who trains. I don't know what she trains for, but she gets up at 2 a.m. and she starts training. And I was like, oh yeah, she's the real MVP, like 2 a.m. But you know what? The morning, but you got to be a morning person to appreciate the morning in that way. You know, just like a night person can really appreciate that 1 to 3 a.m., pocket of time. You have to be a morning person. It's not something I would, tell everybody do it. But if you're a morning person, stretching yourself an hour more, it helps me. It helps me just to kind of figure out what everyone else's day is supposed to look like, and then being ready for all the things to come. So
yeah, it's like you get this head start above everybody else who's like,
oh yeah, I feel like I'm winning.
Their emails at 8, and you're like, oh, I already did all that. I'm on lunch. It's like 7.
It's true though. But you know what? I'm a slow content creator. So me getting a few hours ahead, I actually stay in step with everyone. But it's just more kind of like, figuring out how my brain works. Like if it takes you a few hours to write a blog post, you need to start earlier you can't start with everybody else and be behind. So I think it's just more of, me working, with how I work, and knowing that, to stay in step with everyone else, I got to do it a little different.
Yeah. Okay. Question number 3. Tell me about a way that you overcame a failure or a mistake and what you learned from it.
You know what? I've been trying meditation, and I used to laugh at folks that meditate. I'm sorry for all those who meditate, but like I did judge you at one point. And, but now, you know what? I like guided meditation, and there's meditation specifically for entrepreneurs, creatives, thinkers, thought leaders. And it allows me to slow down, slow down long enough to receive a message that's not via WhatsApp. It's not text message. It's not on TV. It's just someone speaking to me calmly, even though I may be in all upset, someone speaking to me calmly and saying, think about this. And it has been such a game changer in all the things that have going on. And the voice never changes. I love that. I love that they keep the same energy no matter what I am feeling. So that's how I've overcome a lot of stuff, because I've been forced to just think about it. Like, just be still, listen to my voice and think about it. Whatever your answer is, give yourself a few minutes to think about it. And I have been able to I've always been pretty decisive, but I have fewer times where I'm thinking like, what the hell just happened? Now it's like, oh, I know what the hell just happened. I'm rethinking, if it should have happened, but I know what I did. And I was very, mindful and in the moment. It's allowing me to be present. I'll go with that. That's the word I'm going to use, present.
Oh, awesome. So it kind of overlaps into this question, which I think we've sort of talked about, but I'm curious if you have any other tips. So it says, what one trait or habit is most responsible for keeping you on track?
Grace. Just giving myself time to have grace for myself. If I don't wake up at 3:45, it's not the end of the world if I hit snooze. It's not the end of the world if I take a nap. And having grace for others, that habit of being human, the habit of just kind of giving folks the opportunity to screw up. I judge them quietly, but it's not it's not something where they can't be themselves with me. Like, they can't make a mistake. They can't say something wrong. They can't miss a meeting. They can't be late. They can't wake up at 3:45. Whatever that looks like, the habit of giving grace has been a changer for me and my relationships, and ultimately my business, because, I've been able just to do things, just let them flow naturally. It's not, freaking out all the time. So.
Mm-hmm.
Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I think so. I love that question too, because so many people answer it in a different way. And some people hear the part like, oh, what's one trait about you? And then other people hear, oh, what's one habit that you do? So some people are like, oh, I give people grace. I give myself grace. And other people are like, I make sure that I drink coffee every morning. You know,
oh, that too.
Right. It's just like, it's just so different how people will hear that question in different ways based on how different their personality is. And I just love it. I love these questions. I think it's so interesting. It's an interesting way to learn a lot about who a person is and how they function and how they operate and how their brain works.
Right.
How they think about things. And it's cool. Number 5, what's the best piece of advice you've ever gotten? And what advice would you give to other people?
The best piece of advice, now mind you, I'm almost 40. So I keep hearing this, you're young. It's okay. You know, take your time. And at first I'm thinking that's appropriate when you're a teenager, but then 20s and 30s. But you are young, you know, like in a sense of comparatively, you're young. And there is time, you know, like that mad dash to have this and that, especially when you're looking at others who are younger, who have, you know, bigger businesses, they have more employees, they're making more money. And you're like, well, at 39, I should be doing this because they're 25. And it's like, no, you're young too, because there's a 70-year-old person that's saying all the things you're doing at 39, I am now doing at 70. So I think that was the best piece of advice. And it kind of keeps me centered in that it's not a race, it's a marathon. You know, just pace yourself, you got time. And the best piece of advice I would give is it all takes time, you know, like everything takes time. And we live in a world where everything needs to be hurried, that we need to make a decision today. We need to start a business tomorrow. We need to make, you know, our first 100,000 in 1 year. Like everything is hurried. And there's all the stress and anxiety and then frustration. And then that leads to kind of depression and, you know, all these energies that really, if you're mindful that it takes time, it's okay. You know, like then it's like, okay, you didn't make your first 100,000. That's okay. You made your first 20,000, your first 50,000, whatever that is. Mm-hmm. And, you know, just stop and think about it. It all takes time. Everything takes time. It takes time to cook, you know, an egg. It's probably the fastest thing you can make, but it still takes time, you know? So, you know, just being mindful that it's okay. It's okay. You have time.
I love that. Oh, what a nice thing to end our show on today. So I am super excited that you get to be our guest on episode 50. It's like
Me too.
Like 50 episodes in 1 year. And I think as far as being somebody who has ADHD and doing something consistently every week for a year is a huge thing for me. And having a schedule that like I record enough so that I can put a show out at approximately the same day every week and like do that and follow through and be consistent with it is like super special for me. And being able to provide like these interesting conversations that are full of these little nuggets of wisdom out into the world every single week is so special. So I'm really glad that you could be here and be our guest on episode 50. So I'm just so glad that this has been happening and we are coming up on our 1 year anniversary for the podcast in a couple of weeks. So stay tuned for that. We're going to have some fun giveaways on social media with little gift baskets with cool things provided by a number of our previous guests. And it's going to be some good shit in there. So stay tuned on our social media for our fun giveaways that we're going to do. Can you tell everyone where they can find you online?
Sure. So first and foremost, congratulations. I am stoked for you because I remember when you first put it out, I had jazz hands then too. So it's so cool to see you doing all the things. But for me, you can find me. I'm mostly on LinkedIn, but you can go right to KenyanaDavid.com and it'll take you to my LinkedIn. And from there, I think LinkedIn is probably the best place to find me. I'm on Facebook as well. Everything's under Kenyana David. And if you're interested in 8118, it's literally 8118, 81 the number, 18 the word.com. So awesome. That's where I'm hanging out.
Cool. Well, we will have all of those links in the show notes. Thank you so much for being here. Thanks everyone for listening. And we will be back next week with a new, fun, exciting guest. And we will continue onward for as long as I am able.
Thank you. And thank you for inviting me. This was a good time.
Oh, awesome. Thanks so much. We will see you next week on the Reach the Stars podcast. Bye, everybody.
A single interaction has the power to change your life forever. This is a place for the stories of those moments. Stories of pursuing dreams, overcoming tragedy and failure, of coming back to life after so much of what feels like dying, of continuing on with only a vision as a map. This is the place where those moments live on. Come sit by the fire, look up at the stars, and be forever changed too.
Thank you for being with us on the Reach the Stars podcast. Our theme music is generously provided by Byrocratic. You can find him on bandcamp.com. Thank you to all of our current patrons, guests, and everyone else who helps make this dream a reality. We are so proud to be building this amazing community with all of you. If you love this podcast, please consider sharing with a friend, leaving a review on iTunes, and becoming a patron at www.patreon.com/reachthestars. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel to see the videos of these conversations. We'll see you next week. In the meantime, do something cool and tell us about it.